Hello YouTube, and welcome to this big bag master plan. Today I'm going to go over every single step you'll need to follow if you want a bigger and juicier upper back. If you are familiar with the master plans, you know the way it's going to be. We're going to go from step 1 to step 4, and these are going to take sometimes months, sometimes a year. But the idea is that I'm going to give you a structure to follow and exercises to do, so as to make sure that you apply the proper method to your hypertrophy training. And as always, because we are talking about a big muscle group like the back, you understand that I'm not going to make small distinctions. So for the arm master plan, it was both forearms, biceps, and triceps. Today it is the same. We're going to do lats, rhomboids, traps, teres major and minor. There will be no difference whatsoever because most of the movements I will ask you to do will hit all of these muscle groups at once. But if you want to know what exercise is going to be best for which muscle group of the back, you can always go check out the 2 tier lists I made for the upper back in particular. I'm going to place them in the description for you if there is space. If not, you can look it up. But understand that this is holistic advice that is supposed to apply to your training routine directly. And this also means that depending on your current level, you will have to start at step 2, step 3, or maybe even step 1. If you're a complete novice, naturally, I encourage you to start at step 1. But if you've been training for a while and some of the things I'm going to tell you to do, you've already done, do not hesitate to go directly to step 2 or step 3. It's not going to kill you. Just make sure that it's in line with your current training level. Also, keep in mind, it's a question that comes back a lot in these videos, that these master plans aren't programs. They're just general guidelines that give you a structure to follow in order to become bigger. This doesn't mean that you cannot just follow them as is, but as they are, they're not enough because they only concern themselves with one muscle group. So until the day where you have every single master plan, which might be in a year or two, and you can just summon Exodia because you have the 2 legs, the 2 arms, the torso, and the head, you're going to have to make sure that you integrate these master plans directly into your current program. Now that this has been said, let us move on to the master plan proper. So, step 1 is going to be extremely easy. You are a novice, a noob, you've never trained your back before, you want a massive back. Are you going to start by doing 50 variations for like pull downs or for rows? No, that is the worst thing possible. Your body is going to react and to respond to pretty much whatever you do. So we're going to do as little as possible to get as much back as possible. In that regard, you are going to pick one exercise from each of the following categories. The first one will be a hip hinge. If you don't know what a hip hinge is, you can Google it. It's movements, for example, like the deadlift, like the block pull, like the good morning. These are hip hinges. The movement that train the glutes, the posterior chain, the hamstrings, and the lower back. I want to go against the dogma of forcing you guys to do a deadlift. No, there's no reason for that. You want to start with an hyperextension, that is fine by me. Then you're going to pick one vertical pull. So it's going to be a pull-up or a machine like a lat, pull down, things like this fall into the category of the vertical pull. And that is up to you, okay? I'm not forcing you to do pull-ups. I personally believe that you would better off starting with that movement because it's a great movement for hypertrophy. But if you cannot do pull-ups, you're too heavy or you're too weak, you're a girl, and it's discouraging you, it's perfectly fine to start with a machine, but know that eventually I would like you to do pull-ups because once we start talking about weighted pull-ups, which are tremendous for your upper back, if you can't do a pull-up, you're going to be in trouble. And then you're going to pick one horizontal pull, whichever you like. The only thing I want you to pay attention to is you want to do them legless, meaning not that you're going to have necessarily to just not have your feet touch the floor, the ground as you do them, but rather that I don't want you to pick like a heavy barbell row because that would interfere with the hip hinge. So in reality, something like a barbell row would fall within the category of the hip hinge and not the horizontal pull. So something like a dumbbell row or a cable row would be better indicated for that family of lifts in particular. And now that you have your 3 lifts and they interfere with each other as little as possible in terms of recovery, you're going to do each on a different day of the week. So that's assuming you train 3 times a week. If you train less than 3 times a week, it's okay, you'll just do 2 on the same day. But if that is the case, I ask that you please never do the vertical and horizontal pull on the same day because it will damage performance. Instead, make sure you do your hinge plus the horizontal or vertical pull. Once you become more endurant, this won't be a problem anymore, but for step 1, it is very important because our goal is to promote quality volume and to reduce fatigue as much as possible in order to get your work capacity up. Once the work capacity is up, well, fine, you can do 2 or even 3 back exercises in the same day, but so far it would be counterproductive. So let's say you train 3 times a week. An example of a template would be on Monday you do dumbbell rows, your horizontal pull, on Wednesday your deadlifts, your hip hinge, and on Friday your pull-ups, your vertical pull. That way we split the volume, you're fully performant, and you can fully recover. You can also do Tuesday dumbbell rows and then Friday deadlifts and pull-ups if you only train 2 times a week. And keep in mind that this frequency also applies if you train more than 3 times a week. Let's say you're a novice on a 4 times a week split for some reason. It does not mean you're going to add sets. It just means that you'll have a day where you don't train back. I insist on this because there is no point in doing more than just that. Now, when it comes to the rep ranges and the sets, for the hip hinge, I recommend if you do heavy pulls from the floor, so the deadlift, a 3x3 or a 3x5. That is really like the ceiling of the volume I think is relevant for you on the type of exercise. I also believe that something like 1 set of 3 or 1 set of 5 can be very good because the deadlift is very fatiguing, it stimulates you a shit ton, you really don't need that much volume. But if you opt instead for something like an RDL or a good morning, even hyperextensions, 6 to 10 or 8 to 12 will be your friend, and I guarantee you that when you get started, this is going to kick your ass. So you can do from 2 to 4 sets. I know that some people look at 2 sets and say, well, that's not enough. I'm seeing that changing nowadays. People start to recognize that intensity will promote growth and that volume should really be something that you use in a sense as a last resort to keep growing. But 2 sets of heavy RDLs should be enough to completely cook your posterior chain. So don't be overzealous and ease into it. For the vertical pull, if you do pull-ups, I personally recommend as many reps as possible. There is no reason to hold back or to not go to failure. Do as many as you can for 3 to 4 sets every time you do pull-ups. So 1 time a week on this particular program. I also believe that 2 times a week is possible because it's easy to recover from. But in this master plan, we're not doing that. Then, if we're talking about something like a machine, so a pull down, something like an 8 to 12 is going to be great. It's a good rep range over the board, 3 to 4 sets. And for the horizontal pulls, I have the very same recommendation, 6 to 10, 8 to 12, for something like a dumbbell row, a saw row, a cable row, all of that works really, really well. 10 to 15 is also possible. But keep in mind that this is not going to apply to the barbell row. So if you did a barbell row, I'm not saying not to do them. It's a great movement for the back, but you always want to program them as a hip hinge, meaning that they are going to open the day, and on that particular step, you would not do another back exercise on the same day. That comes later. And for barbell row, I would tell you that something like a 6 to 10 is great. You don't want to get too low because your form is going to suffer. But always remember that the exercise selection, not the movement pattern selection, is up to you. That's why I'm saying vertical pull. You pick whichever you like. If you have something that you particularly enjoy, do it because it's going to be conducive to you actually sticking to it. Now, let me repeat myself because I know that some of you are going to want to do more. There is no point in doing more than that. This is already plenty for beginners. You will get, when you become more advanced, to do more volume to a point where it's even going to become annoying the amount of volume your upper back is going to require. You are now at a stage where you can blow up with almost no work. So please enjoy it. This is your childhood. This is your adventure. You get to not have any worries in the wood. So enjoy it while it lasts. This step is going to last until your work capacity grows so much that you realize that this is simply not enough. When you're done with your pull for the day, you want more. You feel like your back can take more. That is going to happen because the back is super endurant. And when that happens, we move on to step 2, when you get to the point where you know you can handle more daily back volume. I insist on the daily because this is the part of the master plan where now you're going to train back multiple times a day. For this step, you're going to pick 2 new lifts, 1 hip hinge of your choice, and either 1 vertical or horizontal pull. In reality, any back movement that you like, I just want you to pick 1. If you want more carryover to your main lift, let's say you do, for example, pull-ups for your main lift, you might want to pick a secondary movement that is going to be in close proximity in terms of specificity. So for the pull-up, you know that something like a lat pull-down would be very close, so pick that. That is what is known as a soft variation. But the good thing is that we're bodybuilders. So specificity for us is not as necessary as it is for strength athletes. So you could also pick something like a hard variation that is in a completely different family. If you want more variety, you want to try new lifts, that is perfectly fine. Also, use that opportunity to try and diversify the rep range. So for example, you did deadlifts 3x3 and you pick another hip hinge, let's say a good morning. Don't do a 3x3 on the good morning, do a 3x6 to 10. That is going to be a better rep range for that lift, 1, and 2, it's going to be more volume, it's going to give you more volume and intensity manipulation, aka more gains. Likewise, if you did a dumbbell row 6 to 10, and you're going to start doing cable rows, do them 8 to 12. It's always good to have different rep ranges in your program because it promotes progression, it promotes intensity, etc., etc. And when it comes to where you're going to place these movements, you're going to add these lifts wherever it makes sense. At this point, you should have a decent notion and idea of your own recovery, and you're not a complete idiot. So I trust that you're going to understand that some days make sense and some days don't. For example, you know that logically, if you're going to add another hip hinge to your program, you're going to want to put the new one as far away from their counterpart as possible. So let's say you train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and you deadlift on Tuesday. On what day should you be doing hyperextensions? Well, to promote recovery and performance, the logical option would be on Saturday because it's as far away as possible from the original day where you train the same muscle group and the same body part. Once you get to a point where you have literally so many exercises that you can no longer do this, it's okay to train closer. And usually I would tell you that in this case, it's even better to just do the movement on the same day to promote recovery. Example, let's say I don't have that luxury of doing my hyperextensions on the Saturday. Well, might as well do them on the Tuesday alongside the deadlifts. That way on Saturday, I can do a new hip hinge, I have plenty of days to recover, and I can promote both performance and recovery. That topic is going to come back later when we discuss adding even more movements to your back training, but keep that in mind. That is how frequency is dealt with. Likewise, if you did cable rows on your Monday and you want to add dumbbell rows, I recommend you do them on the Thursday because likewise, it's the day that is the furthest away from the original day. And if you don't have a choice, for some reason, already at this step, you're out of options, you're out of days, it's fine to do the 2 on the same day, but never more than 2 exercises, back exercises on the same day, and never the same family. So you have your back against the wall, you have to do the 2 on the same day, but you're going to make sure you don't do the 2 hip hinges on the same day. You're going to do your hip hinge and your vertical pull, and you're going to push the other hip hinge as far away as possible. Also keep in mind that these 2 movements are additions. They're not variations, meaning that you're supposed to do them in the week. You're not going to rotate anything. Every single movement so far in this master plan has to be hit at least 1 time a week. And you could tell me, okay, well, we're jumping from 3 exercises to 5. That's a big jump in volume. It's almost 50%. Isn't that counterindicated? You are correct. It's going to be a shock to your system. That's how you grow. But we want to ease you into it. And how do we ease you into it? Well, we manipulate the volume. So what you're going to do is you're going to do only 2 sets. These new exercises coming in, just 2 sets, maybe even 1 set for the first week. And in order to make space for them in your recovery bucket, in your recovery schedule and budget, what we can also do is pull back the other exercises. So only do 2 sets on the other exercises, as you only do 1 to 2 sets for the new exercises that is going to make you recover, you're going to be more performant, and you're not going to be overwhelmed by the amount of volume. The goal, of course, being to gradually build up your way to 4 sets, which, by the way, is also another mean of progressively overloading, because you're going to add a set a week or even a set every 2 weeks. That is a lot of volume, and eventually you get to a point where every single back exercise is hit for 4 sets, and you realize that your work capacity has gone up and the size of your back has gone up as well. And the goal of step 2 is to get to a point where all 5 lifts cohabitate within the same week without any interference in order to accumulate as much quality volume as possible. Now, just hearing me speak, this sounds mighty complicated, but in reality it's not. If you just take a piece of paper and you go along as I speak, you're going to realize that this is easy peasy. But to make sure that it's easy to follow, I'm going to put in the pinned comments every single step simplified. And also I want to make sure that you understand that as long as you're doing, you're going to be growing. What I mean by this is that this is not rocket science. I'm going to make you do exercises for the back. Regardless of vertical or horizontal, your back is going to grow. They might grow in slightly different fashion. You might grow more lats or more traps on a given exercise, but ultimately you will grow. So as far as you're learning and applying, you are all good. Do not panic. This is an anti-minimalistic approach to back training, meaning that you are going to get gains. Now let's talk about pull-ups, because some of you guys in this master plan picked pull-ups as your main vertical pull, and you are now at a crossroads because you either want to add another vertical pull for step 2, which is fine, or you are done with pull-ups in the sense that you can hit 10 reps clean. That is my personal threshold to know that you are done with bodyweight pull-ups. If that is the case, here's what you can do. First, we're going to start loading these pull-ups. And I insist on these pull-ups because you're going to stick with the same style. Do not switch style, do not switch grip. We're going to go from as many reps as possible to 3 to 5 reps clean for 3 to 4 sets. I insist also on the clean. If you start loading pull-ups and your form is different from the bodyweight form, you are cheating yourself. You want the same tempo and the same technique to get better gains and better hypertrophy. And then the secondary step you can do is this new movement you're going to add for your step 2 can be another vertical pull, and it can also be a new pull-up. So you could do just bodyweight pull-up chest to bar that is going to greatly complement your weighted pull-ups. You could also do a new grip. That is when you can experiment with a new grip. Just stick with your body weight. It's a variation. You could also do a lat pull down for 8 to 12 if you wanted a different tension or you want to deload your tendons a bit. That is an option. The reason why I insist on this is that it's my personal opinion that pull-ups are absolutely S tier for your upper back, especially your lats. So if you want to go down that path, this is what you must do. So if we are to recap what's going on in your program right now, you are doing 5 exercises for back for a total of 10 to 20 sets per week. 20 sets being the max volume. You should not be doing more than that at this point. And also, this is what you want to build towards. Before you can even consider going upwards of that, you have to be able to hit that consistently every week, recover and progress. If this is not the case, your work capacity is not good enough. The same applies to step 1. Step 1 had 3 exercises for a max of, I believe, 12 sets. Unless you can hit those 12 sets comfortably, you had no business going up to that. Again, we manage our volume. We only go up in volume when absolutely necessary, meaning that each step should take you some time. You should spend at least 6 months to a year on each step, because the goal is a big back, and a big back is not going to be built in a fortnight. Now understand that at the end of step 2, the ceiling of max volume is already 20 sets. And that is already a lot. For biceps, for arms, for forearms, it would be even a little bit too much. But remember that we're talking about the back. And the back is a complex body part that is very gluteneous in terms of volume. It can never get enough volume. So this means that we can still go higher, but we're not going to go higher just for the sake of going higher. We go higher because we want to grow. So make sure you milk each and every one of these steps. You should, of course, be going to failure save for certain exercises, like the deadlift, like the hip hinges. You can leave a rep in reserve, maybe even the pull-up. If you don't know how to grind pull-ups, some people can hurt themselves. But for the rest, go hard, go ham. It's very tough to hurt yourself doing a back isolation movement while the lower back is not involved. You should not be afraid. And you're going to graduate to step 3 when you hit that volume ceiling, when you hit those 20 sets, and you start needing more volume to grow. Step 3 is extremely easy. You add one exercise, either a vertical or horizontal pull or shrug. Maybe you want to get more traps, so you can pick a shrug variation, but no hinge. Okay, you're going to stick with either your one hip hinge or your two hip hinges, because this is what you selected on for the step 2. Here, if you want to get a new hip hinge, your only option will be a variation. We're adding one variation, meaning a lift that can now sub in for another one via a rotation, meaning that you won't be doing both each week. Example, you are doing your deadlifts, okay? That's fine and all, but now we're going to add the variation, and your variation is going to be the RDL. How does that work? Well, week A, you do deadlift 3x3. Week B, you do Romanian deadlifts 3x8 to 12. That is, of course, only if you picked one hip hinge. If you wanted to pick more than that, you could be doing deadlift and RDL every single week. Do I recommend it? No, because I personally believe that you don't need to do that much for these movements, but hey, it's your master plan. So if there's something that you can recover from and you like, absolutely do it. That being said, for this specific step, I highly recommend you add pullovers to your arsenal. It's a great lift. I cannot recommend it enough. It will change your physique. Do them with dumbbells, do them with the machine pullover, not the cable, the machine pullover, if you have one in your gym, because I believe that pullovers are their own thing. Some people will tell you that they're a vertical pull, and technically, if you look at the mechanics of the elbow and the shoulders, especially in the movement, they're not wrong, but the angle is completely different. And so the way it stretches your lats is like a brand new wood. It doesn't feel like a pull-up at all. So if you have a lift to add and you're unsure, you don't have one that you like in particular, add this. Keep in mind that the pullover cannot be added as a variation, but later down the line, we're not there yet, you will be able to have a variation for the pullover, which might be cable pullover, dumbbell pullover, machine pullover, whichever we'll like, but this is not the topic at hand. What is of great interest here is that at this point, you should be doing 1 to 3 vertical pulls, depending on what you selected to add, 1 to 3 horizontal pulls, and 1 to 2 hip hinges a week. So even if you train 6 times a week, you can now hit back every single day. But I do not recommend it. The high frequency approach is good, but there is such a thing as too high of a frequency when it starts to impair recovery, and that's exactly the issue here. So always make sure that you leave at least 48 hours between each session where you hit back, even if it means doing 2 back exercises on the same day. I would much rather you do too much on one day and damage performance a little bit, because keep in mind that the back is super endurance, meaning that it's always a good idea to prioritize recovery over performance, especially since most pulls are going to hit similar areas of the back anyways. So if you go in and you think, okay, I'm a genius, I'm going to maximize recovery and performance by hitting back every single day, even if you do a vertical pull on Monday, that's going to affect your performance on the horizontal pull on your Tuesday. So you're going about it the wrong way. Now, I'm not saying by that you have to espouse a bro split approach where you do all of your movements for back on Monday and then nothing the rest of the week. If you look at the way I programmed the master plan, it's to force you to hit back every time there is a window open for back. But I also know that some of you guys who try to follow that letter to a T, you would see that you do 6 back exercises a week and you would think, okay, might as well train 6 times and hit each exercise once a week. That is a bad idea. Do not do it. The point here is, of course, that you are at step 3 and your muscular endurance is now very high. Your work capacity is now very high. So not only do you recover fast, but you can also endure a lot more, meaning that Even just doing 3 to 4 sets of a back exercise a day will not be enough. It will leave you hungry. So you'll very easily be able to do 2 exercises a day. And by doing that, you're going to accumulate more sets a week, which at some point might get you to the ceiling. And if that is the case, it is time to graduate. So if we look at the amount of work that you do on step 3, we see that you do a total of 12 to 24 sets a week. Okay, that is the ceiling of the volume that you can do for that particular step. And as crazy as it sounds, for back, not for other body parts, it might not be enough. It might also be enough, okay? That is important to keep in mind. You might never get to that point. You might get to a point where you realize that staying between 12 to 24 sets a week is really all you need to grow. It is all the weekly volume that you need to keep growing forever, to keep adding weight on the bar, and to keep volume fluctuating so as to make sure progression never stops. This is a topic I already discussed in my unlimited hypertrophy method. You can go check it out. I just warn you because I know some of you guys, maybe in a few years, are going to get to step 3 and realize, hey, I'm progressing just fine. Do I have to go to step 4? The answer is no. Keep in mind, we only go up in volume when necessary for progression. So if you progress at step 3, stay at step 3 forever. But if you feel like your back can take more, go up in sets. And that is step 4, you're going to add 1 new exercise and 2 new variations, which now gets you to a grand total of 14 to 28 sets a week with 7 different back exercises at your disposal. In my opinion, this range of volume encompasses 99.9% of lifters in terms of volume needed for growth. I think that unless you're like a super outlier or you just enjoy volume, no one will need more than that. And actually, many people will need much less than that. As I said, many people also exist below that range, okay? The HIT meme is bad because it's an absolute. It's stupid to tell people, hey, do 3 sets and no more because it keeps people small, those who need more. But it's also stupid to tell people, hey, do as many sets as possible until you die. That is not the point. Do as many as is necessary. Do as little as possible to get as much as possible back. And this is why I mentioned the variations. Because at this point, step 4, you have your 7 different lifts, but you also have 3 variations that you can rotate weekly for more variety. And this also applies if you do not end up picking 7 different back exercises. So let's say you stopped at 5 and you said, okay, 5 is plenty for me. I don't need more for my weekly volume. You might still want some variation and some rotation. In this case, you can pick upwards of 5 variations. So now you have a total of 10 lifts for the back, but you still only do 5s a week. And you will see that this is going to be a great tool to keep progressing. Just make sure that it doesn't actually do the opposite. If you see, for example, that your lifts regress because it lacks frequency in the approach, then maybe cut back the variations a bit and see how many you need to be able to get both volume, variety, and progression. And again, if you're a bit confused by variations, how am I supposed to pick them up? Check out the unlimited hypertrophy method. I might even place it in the description again if there is space. But please keep in mind the golden rule. You never train back every single day, but you also don't do all of your back exercises on the same day. So regardless of the amount of sets you do, even if you go up to 28, never do more than 3 back exercises on the same day. So if you do a hip hinge, you can then do 2 horizontal pulls, 2 vertical pulls, 1 vertical, 1 horizontal. If you do 2 verticals, you can do 1 horizontal. All of that is fairly logical. You understand you're not going to do 3 hip hinges, 3 horizontal pulls. Some people do it with the pulls, and I think it's a bad idea. When I see guys doing days where they do deadlifts, block pulls, cable rows, weighted chin-ups, pullovers, that is a waste. That is a waste because past exercise 2 or 3, you have no juice left. The weight you're lifting is not going to do anything to your muscles. So this is why this master plan was devised to make sure that mathematically you have to hit back exercises several times a week. So if we take a look at a practical example, if you are at step 4 and you have 7 exercises you have to do a week and you train 3 times a week, you're going to do 2, 3, 2. You train 4 times a week, 2, 2, 2, 1. Or maybe 2, 1, 1, 3. It's up to you. Keep in mind that upper threshold and you will be just fine. And that is that for this master plan. So as you see, it's not complicated at all because I believe that hypertrophy and programming shouldn't be complicated. All that is left for you to do now is to actually apply it because theory without application is entirely worthless. If you learned anything from this master plan, if I was of use, please consider supporting the channel on my Ko-fi page. It's the first link in the description. Your donations and memberships are what allow this channel to keep running. So I want to say a big thank you to everyone who is currently pledging and spending their hard-earned money to support my work. It is greatly appreciated. And I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you for watching and have a good night. And yes, this was recorded post-editing, but I couldn't just let you guys go without a proper goodbye.